I'm Reason. I've been around in this community for quite a long time, going on, I guess, 20 years now, rather shockingly. I seem to have gotten old in my own lifetime here. I'm not as young as I look, unfortunately. So I run Fight Aging, the blog, which I've used as a platform for advocacy for some time. They're going on 20 years, I guess, though that's more like 15 now. And recently, last year, I founded Repair Biotechnologies to actually jump into the industry and do some things. Prior to that, I was doing angel investing in some companies where I felt that it was a better choice than giving to the SENS Research Foundation or other groups to do the research, because companies have the chance to attract a great deal more money much more rapidly than non-profits do, unfortunately. It's just the way of the world. So that's very much the transition of our community right now. And as that happens, I think it becomes much more important to think about, okay, why the hell are we doing this thing? Because sudden influxes of vast amounts of money, there are several $100 million funds right now focused on longevity, and there will be more next year because it's a land rush right now. And if you lose sight of why are you doing this, what is the most effective approach, then you get a bunch of idiots doing stupid things that won't work. And the upshot of that is that money will be wasted. I think that's, to a certain degree, unavoidable. I mean, look at the dot-com era. Every new industry has its peak of hype, and a bunch of stupid things happen, and a bunch of charlatans come in and take money from people who don't know any better. It will happen, but I think it's those of us who are here now and have been here in this community have something of a duty to try to reduce that problem down to a nominal minimum, to the degree that that is even possible to achieve. So why do we do this? The fundamental philosophy of the problem is death is bad, suffering is bad. So death is bad is the more debatable of those two. It is quite possible to construct an ethical position in which we say, okay, it's fine to be dead. You didn't exist for quite a long time before you existed. You will not exist for quite a long time after you cease to exist, and that is the way of the universe. The Stoics were good with this. But I think it's very hard to argue that suffering is acceptable above the sort of maybe I should get out of bed and do something today level of suffering needed to motivate the human animal to go do something constructive. Anything much more than that level of angst, I think, should go away. And certainly the level of pain and physical decrepitude and loss of function and horrible things happening to the people around you that comes with aging, that should go away. I mean, and the world just hasn't quite got there yet in terms of thinking about this the right way. People think about malaria the right way. Malaria is something like 1/600th of the cost to humanity of aging, depending on how you want to measure all the little fripperies around the edges. So if we really feel up in arms about malaria, willing to spend billions on getting rid of it, which some people clearly are, then we should be spending trillions on getting rid of aging. We should be, we're not. And that's why the advocacy community came into being and started to do things, was because we have this weird mismatch between our capabilities and our goals. And the world is a crazy place. I think everybody acknowledges that. There are many, many insanities that the human condition contains, be that politics, be that the way some people like peanut butter. I don't know. I mean, pick your poison. So, and aging is just another one of these insanities. The world is insane with respect to aging, because accepting aging is insane. I mean, why would anybody accept that you're going to crumble and die and not want to do something about it? Plain basic utilitarianism says we should do something about it if we can do something about it, and we can do something about it. So is the world asleep at the switch because they don't realize we can do something about it? That will change pretty soon. Senolytics will wake everybody up. If you can take a pill that makes your arthritis go away, which is basically what senolytics will do when they're truly effective, and the ones we have right now that are available right now appear to be actually fairly good at getting rid of arthritis, based on the results of trials yet to be published. But once that happens, I think there will be an interesting phase change, and people will start to somewhat wake up from this business of, oh well, aging is a thing, it's just an fact of life where we're all going to die horribly. Let's just get on and try to paper over that. No, let's go full on utilitarian and do something about it. And that's the philosophy of action here. It's really that aging is so terrible that there's really no amount of effort that humanity could spend on this problem that would be too great. And of course, we're so far away from anything that even approaches a reasonable amount of effort, given the level of death and suffering caused by aging, that for the foreseeable future, we can keep on advocating and building $100 million funds. And if they build another 100 of those $100 million funds, that would be a nice start. It would be by no means the right amount of money yet, in order to reasonably address the problem, given what it actually costs. And the cost is enormous. And sadly, most discussions where they do get going about aging really skate over the utilitarianism of it in favor of, oh wow, we're spending a lot of money on entitlements, we need to do something about this. And that seems to be what passes for ethical thought in policy circles these days. It's a matter of, well, we're spending a bunch of money, we should stop doing that. And then, of course, the nihilists seem to be mostly in charge right now, because their idea of not spending so much money is not treating old people for their conditions, rather than let's build rejuvenation therapies that stop old people from ever getting those conditions and and having to spend that money. As I said, it's insanity. It's something that really just needs to change. So this is why the advocacy. And now that we're at the point where funding can be raised for companies, companies are just another form of advocacy. Really, if you look at it in the big picture, we're not building therapies because we can do something with our small slice of the pie of aging. We're building therapies because if we show people that we can do something with our small slice of the pie of aging, there will be another 100 companies over the next decade doing their small slices, because people will see success and they will attempt to replicate it themselves. There are 100, 200, 300 programs out there languishing in the research community that could be turned into companies, turned into therapies, doing useful things in and around aging. And, the research community is just not good at getting funded. They're not good at translating their research into the clinic. They're not good at a lot of things other than just doing the science. And I think it's on the rest of us, where the rest of us means anybody who might be an entrepreneur, all the venture folk, anybody who might be an advocate, to stand up and go sift through this stuff and say, look, we should do something with these things. And if the research community isn't, then, well, this is a time in which anybody can wrap a company around a project and say, I think we can do something with this, go to venture capitalists and get a few $1 million. And that will be the case for the next 20 years on and off as the market cycles up and down. So we should have 1,000 companies doing 1,000 projects related to aging, because while there are only 7 categories of SENS damage that cause aging, some of those categories are very, very broad in terms of their little individual components. We have to fix all of lipofuscin, and we don't even have a catalog of what all lipofuscin is yet, just major pieces of it. We have to get rid of all the amyloids. That's a good 24 projects right there. Stem cells, every tissue, different recipes, and we need to replace those cells, and so on and so forth, all the way down the list. And then after we've got through the SENS list as it exists today, there will be all the things about aging that are problematic but are hidden by the fact that people die before they become problematic, such as your nuclear pore proteins in long-lived neurons. Some of those molecules never change after they are initially created. It's the same molecule for your entire life, and if it gets damaged, that's kind of a problem. How do we build the nanotechnology to go fix our nuclear pore proteins? That's a problem that nobody should care about thing one, today, because there are 50 other things that will kill you before that will become an issue. But it will become an issue. If we don't die from things until we're 150, I'm willing to believe that your nuclear pore proteins getting corroded and corrupted and reacted with is actually a serious issue, at least in the neurons. We can replace everything except the brain. So, the worst case scenario for the ultimate future is they open your skull, take out your brain, put it into a new body. I'm sure it will actually be somewhat more sophisticated than that, but this is just thought experiment. Okay, what's the what's the most radical thing you can get away with in terms of replacement? And that's moving the brain to a new body. What will probably happen is, in fact, the new body will be rebuilt in your old body with delivery of cells and signals and control over cell behavior. But the brain itself, a really challenging problem, because you have to fix it without breaking it. And I think we're getting along the way towards understanding which things to target to just do this, the initial early, don't have inflammation, don't have cells that are supporting the brain go crazy, get rid of the aggregates, try to keep things basically the way they were during your 30s. But that's just a starting point, and there's so much to do after that. So it's a big project. The whole thing is a big project. When I say trillions, I'm serious. This is a very big thing. This is reinventing architecture when you're a caveman, going all the way up to the Renaissance and building huge, enormous palaces. That's the scope of the project for us. I don't think it will take as long as it took the cavemen, but I think that we're definitely in for the long haul. And to the extent that we can incrementally build this along the way, many of us will be in for the long haul. When this turns into somebody's life's work, that life might be rather long. I mean, I don't know how long people will live. I'm in my late 40s, and if you can just do the thought experiment of what will be available to me in my 80s, I won't look anything like an 80-year-old person right now, because I will have no inflammation, no senescent cells. I will probably have no cross-links in my body. I will have had stem cells replaced, my immune system gardened, and so on and so forth, through a long list of things that are going to happen in the next 20 years and are very plausible right now. And so you can add these things up and say, right, but if an 85-year-old has no inflammation, no senescent cells, no cross-links, no atherosclerosis, what does that do to your health? Do you still look like an 80-year-old? Can you go run a mile? I mean, nobody knows, and we get to find out by doing. So that's the great adventure.
Well, further on the AI theme, what do you think of DeepMind's progress in protein folding? Are you aware of that?
So it's sort of, again, it's infrastructure technology. The big problems in aging are all very simple to solve, and it's all bench work in the lab to get your stuff going. You don't need, the only places where artificial intelligence might be useful is improving the state of small molecule drug discovery. And my belief is that small molecule drug discovery will go away largely in favor of gene therapy. And so maybe your AI is looking for genes that have useful effects, but the present process of finding genes that have useful effects is not terrible. It's having good results. So the upshot is, okay, where do you use AI in this process outside of small molecule development? And I just don't see something where it's absolutely screamingly necessary in any way other than maybe just incrementally improving the infrastructure technologies. But fixing senolytic cells, that's fixing senescent cells with senolytics, that's where small molecules might be useful, but the best projects there don't involve small molecules. Dealing with mitochondria, no, that's bench work, and to the extent that small molecules can do anything there, it seems unlikely. That's gene therapies. Stem cell stuff, I mean, it's just a matter of developing the processes, and deep down under the develop the processes thing, you find a role for AI in anything where there's a lot of data to be crunched, machine learning, that sort of stuff. But it's only incremental improvement. Infrastructure makes the world go round, and incremental improvement is not to be sneezed at. But it's just a part of the technology background. You can't jump up and say, okay, we're going to do AI for longevity. No, you're going to do AI for biotech, and then biotech is applied to longevity. But I think AI will vanish into the tool space. It's not going to be a thing that's just up there on its own. I mean, right now it is because it's novel and because people throw money at AI like there's no tomorrow. So people go where the money is. So you get in silico medicine, for example, and they're doing small molecule discovery AI, which is what most people are doing, because that's where the money is. But I think this will just fade into the background. It will just be another tool in the toolkit. So it's not exciting. It's not a category changing thing. It's an incremental advance in just using computers a little bit more to help you do things where there's a lot of data involved, if that all makes sense.
Well, let's talk about like EA. Now, I'm just wondering why EA hasn't really approached this as being a serious contender. Is it they think it's such a hard project, or do they think it's just hard to quantify, or something somewhere in between?
Effective altruism. So these guys are doing smart things in the sense that, big philanthropy is thoroughly corrupt, and one should ask the question, if I want to do some good in the world versus conning myself into thinking that I did some good in the world, what should I do? You don't give to the Red Cross because the Red Cross is a thoroughly corrupt organization. And the same for most of the big things. They have enormous overheads, and most money does not go to what you would want it to go to. So I think the effective altruism movement, in that sense, is great, and it's a very overdue examination of a very overdue examination and critique of philanthropy as a whole. Secondly, if they can find convincing ways to get high net worth individuals to actually give sensibly, because I suspect that the reason many of them don't is that they have absolutely no idea how to do good, and it's a big project to actually do good at scale. If they can get that more people, in the high net worth category, putting their money into projects that actually have a good chance of succeeding, that's good. And the third strand is obviously the effective altruism community has people who are quite concerned about, which projects to fund. And in the extent that anybody takes any look at aging, it's obviously the case that aging is far worse than anything else that happens anywhere. I mean, pick your favorite cause in the third world. I can tell you those people are suffering more from aging than they are from your favorite cause, even if that favorite cause is war and famine. It's still the case. Aging is much, much worse. And this is a sad thing because we could be dealing with all of these things. But when it comes to prioritization, yes, if you want to go solve famine because it's terrible and causes people to suffer, you should also be willing to go solve aging in that same population because it's causing far worse outcomes to far more people. So if the effective altruism community can logically work its way to being advocates to aging, and they should, because it's undeniably the case that it is the worst problem facing humanity, and it's the most cost-effective point of intervention to reduce suffering and death in the world is to intervene in the aging process, even in tiny ways. The outcome is an enormous return on investment from philanthropic investment. So I think they do good, and I think there's not enough of them, and I think they're not talking about aging and anti-aging enough, but they're coming at it from an outsider perspective, so they don't understand the science, they don't understand the degree to which rejuvenation is possible, blah, 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 except for a few of them. So I think effective altruism is a young movement. It has a way to go yet. It's very important. It can be very important. It has the potential to be very important. We shall see how it develops. And that would be my view on that, I think.
What's your view on how we could progress conversations, the right kinds of conversations, forward within the effective altruists community?
Well, it's just advocacy at the end of the day. I mean, to the extent that the aging community needs money, we could go engage the effective altruists to the extent that they have money, in the sense that they can influence people in that way. If it's more effective to go talk to effective altruists, then the aging advocates will go do that, trust me. That might be challenging right now as an argument, because right now it's clearly more effective to go talk to the venture capitalists, because they are very incentivized to put money into these projects, very large amounts of money, to the point where it would be very hard to get that much money through any sort of philanthropic program, unless you're talking to high net worth individuals. So I mean, convincing high net worth individuals to go put money into aging is effective altruism, whether or not you're cloaking it in that name. And certainly I and others are guilty of poking high net worth individuals to say, have you thought about this a little bit? I mean, it seems to make sense to me. Do you want to get old? I mean, you can do something about it. Go do something about it. But I think it's an incremental process. You can't just flip a switch and have all of the trooping masses of the effective altruism community go off and spread your message. Again, we'll see. It will go where it goes.
Is the reason why you think solving aging will be one of the most effective causes, if not the most effective causes, because it solves one of the fundamental upstream problems that where downstream effects, all these diseases that are currently being targeted with lots of money, will be sort of solved by solving the big kahuna burger of anti-aging?
Well, that's one part of it. I mean, there's an enormous waste, but if you look at the amount of money that's actually spent on coping with aging, then making it go away is highly efficient. Of course, it's not just about money. It's about effective reduction of suffering. And money spent on anti-aging research is an enormously cost-effective way to reduce suffering, provided you're spending it on the right anti-aging research rather than the stuff that's not likely to produce more than a small effect. So mTOR inhibitors are great compared to previous technologies for dealing with old age disease because they influence a lot of things, but the effect size is really not large in the grand scheme of things. And if you're going to spend money on developing mTOR inhibitors, then fine, that's happening, but you should spend that same money on developing aspects of the SENS program to actually repair underlying damage rather than sort of tweak the body to be a little more resilient to damage, because people on mTOR inhibitors are still going to die on the same schedule. They're not that more resilient. But people with senescent cells removed, well, who knows? We'll see what that does to lifespan. I think the insurance companies are going to be in for a rude awakening. Personally, I think 5 years is not an unreasonable guess, and that's going to break a lot of insurance companies if they haven't prepared successfully for this.
What Sputnik-style moments or happenings or existence proves do you see as being particularly effective at convincing people? Aubrey de Grey has brought up robust mouse rejuvenation, which in an interview with me, he recently said could happen 50-50 within the next 3 years.
So that, I think, it convinces scientists, and that's helpful. I don't think it convinces the world at large in any useful way, because by that point in time, we will have had senolytics for quite some time. So the thing about senolytics is even the ones now seem to be quite good at making very large impact on the quality of life in older people, and possibly autoimmune diseases and a bunch of other things. So to the degree that you can say, guys, we're giving you a rejuvenation pill, your arthritis is probably going to go away. And then if even 50% of the people lose their arthritis, or like their arthritis is greatly minimized, and they lose their inflammatory conditions, and we turn back early Alzheimer's, and all of these are plausible things the senolytics should do based on the mouse studies. If that happens, then suddenly rejuvenation therapy is a real thing, and people can stop saying, oh, it's not possible to rejuvenate humans, because it is, and then we can go from there to look, this is just one part of the whole. We're just doing one tiny thing. We're not even doing it that well, and look how good it is. And that is, I think senolytics are going to be the point at which an awful lot of things change. And it's happening right now. I mean, the self-experimentation community is doing interesting things. But once the first studies that actually have large effects are published, it's going to be hard to keep this out of people's hands, because there's 60 million people in the US alone that would benefit from senolytics just because they're old enough to have conditions which are inflammatory and will happen. So this shall happen, it will happen. And that would be the moment, I think. Senolytics, not anything else.
Looking at this from a population view, it's been argued that there is a rising tide in an aging population, increasingly aging population at different parts around the world. Do you think solving some of the fundamental problems with anti-aging will help solve that problem, and why?
Well, of course. I mean, old people are old people because they're aged. If you rejuvenate them, they're no longer old. So they will have a better time of it. And if you have an aging population of 80-year-olds who are 65-year-olds, then you have an aging population of 65-year-olds effectively. And it's very easy.